Thank you for coming today. I'm going to give you a bit of a run through of how the Connecting Steps software works and what it can do. Some of you might be at different parts in your kind of Connecting Steps journey. Some of you may have used it previously before. Some may have been using it very briefly or not even touched it yet, but hopefully you'll find some value in this. Good, I'm getting yeses from people. This is good news. Just to give you a bit of a rundown on what we're going to be going through today. So if I click there, so it's going to be running two sections. The main training about 30 to 45 minutes. It'll be me just kind of going through each screen and what it can do. And then the last bit will be a Q&A session of about 15 minutes. So I may run over, I may not. It depends kind of how it all goes. As I said before, all your microphones are muted. It's so you can hear me. Otherwise, we tend to pick up a lot of people's background noises as well, and that can detract from what I'm saying. Welcome for you to ask questions. However, what I'll do is I'll actually deal with those at the end. There's a Q&A section which you'll see in the bar, and you can ask questions there, and I can deal with those as we go through towards the end. So feel free to ask them as we're going through, but I won't actually kind of deal with those at the end. In case you're wondering, there is a link you'll be sent at the end of the be about 24 hours time. You'll be sent a link to this webinar. Gives us a chance just to cut out anything that's not useful in there. And what you'll also see is there's a couple of handouts in the handout section in the bar. So there's definitions of level of achievement, which I'll come to later, and just a quick user guide that we use that we send out to schools just to kind of get them started. But if you've been using the system for some time, it may not be of as much value to you. Okay, so let's kind of dive in. So just a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be going through today. Just basic navigation around Connecting Steps. Then we'll move on to kind of the individual assessment screen, which is predominantly where most people spend their time. And then I'll go through other ways you can assess, because there's different screens you can use, and it really depends on your setting which ones you use. Ultimately, how you show progress for an individual student, and then on for a group. And I know it says first things first, baselining. I have to show you the first bit in order to show you how to baseline. But if you're new to the system or you have used it previously and you've got new students coming, then baselining is kind of critical. So I'll kind of go through that. And then there's some things to think about, and then just a kind of a summary of everything. So yeah, let me move on. These are just kind of title pages just to kind of click in with what we're doing here. Makes it easier if you're going to watch the video after in order to get to the bits that you want to get to. So let me click here. Let's move that over to there. Good. Right. Okay. So navigating around Connecting Steps. So let me go to here and here. Right, so you should now be able to see my screen. So the website to go to is uk.connectingsteps.com. So that's available anywhere in the world, technically, and that's all you need to do is to type in to get to our website, and you'll be presented by this grey screen, and it'll ask for your username and password. Now, if you don't have one of those, somebody will need to provision that you with a login to get into the software. And generally, the way that's done is you are invited to use the system, and you'll get an email, and it'll ask you to click a button. You click on that, and then you get to fill in all your own details and then set your password. There is a password policy. It's 10 characters, and it's a mixture of 3 of the following 4 things: uppercase, lowercase, number, and special character. So as long as you use 3 of those and it's 10 characters long, you should be good to go. I know it's difficult, but security these days, we're all very security conscious, and we're trying to help you secure your data as best as we can. Okay. What you'll also see here is a security box that says this is a public or this is a private computer. Really, all that the implications of that is, if I select this is public, if you stop clicking anything on the screen or you walk away from the computer, after 20 minutes, it will just log you out. If you select this as a private computer, it will actually stay logged in for an hour after that. And that's really kind of just down to that fact that if your computer doesn't lock automatically and you do leave the screen logged in, it's minimizing that risk for you long term. So yeah, so just think about carefully. It always defaults to public. And if you're using the system, the timeout doesn't kick in, but it's only when you kind of stop clicking on things. What you'll also see is a forgotten password bit. There's very little intervention from us in the system. Once we provision the main account, every account after that is controlled by that person. So as a user, if you forget your password, you can just click forgot password, you type in your email address, and it will send you a password reset email. So like with everything, it's your email is king. Always, keep that secure because it gives you access to everything else. If you have to change your email address at any point, whether your schools have changed over to an academy or anything like that, and the emails have changed, you can actually change your email address in the system as well if you need to. But yeah, the system administrator will be able to help you out if you get stuck. So I'm going to log in. So go into connecting steps, John at eversense.com. This is just some of our test data. And if I log in, I'm then presented with this screen. So just a kind of a quick overview of navigation. I'm going to be predominantly concentrating on assessments, individual reports, and group reports today. Some of you may have some additional options, be it autism progress or Eversense, CSAM, or system administration. Now, if you're an administrator, you'll see that. I'm not going to cover that today. It's a lot to get through otherwise. I'm really going to be focusing on these three here. You'll see there's some quick links here, gets you straight to the screens that you want to get to. Individual assessments is a big one. Group assessment by level is another big one, and then there's group assessment by strand. So they're just some kind of quick links to get you where you need to go as quick as possible. What you'll also see is that these icons are replicated up in the top here. So I have a list of icons across the top, and under each of those I have some more screens. So this is a separate, different way of you navigating the system. So you don't have to use this, you can use this top menu. This is kind of always visible. So we're giving you kind of two different ways in which you can get through the system. Okay, and then if I click on these, it'll actually take me in and drill me down to my next set of reports. So individual assessment, group assessment by level, group assessment by strand. Okay, and you can see those are replicated at the top. For those of you that use GCSE, you'll see group assessment by flight path. I'll probably be skipping that today, but most of you will just see predominantly these four areas. So yeah, that's kind of a little overview of kind of navigating the system. The only final two things are there's a little cog in the top right here, which gives you some options, save as default view. That means when you log in, it will take you straight to a particular screen. Changing your email and your password. There's a license agreement there, which you will have had to click when you first log in. About just tells you the version of the system, and then the help section gets you to the to our help site, and log out obviously is log out, and then there's the print icon here. So for all the screens I'm about to show you, that enables you to print them out. Okay, so yeah, so that's just a little bit on kind of navigating. I'm going to pretty much dive straight in and go to using the individual assessment screen effectively, which is kind of where most people are going to spend their time. So if I go back, and that is located in the, if I go back to home, it's in the assessment section, and it's the very first screen here, individual assessments. Kind of takes me a little while to get through this. There's lots on here. The good news is this sidebar replicates through the system in lots of different places, maybe slightly different iterations of it, but it's pretty much the same. So once you kind of get to grips with how this works, it should help you throughout the system. First things first, the top drop down here tells me registration on diversity groups. So we're assuming now that the students are in the system. That's something the system administrator does, and they can either enter them into the students in manually, or they can actually be imported, whether you have SIMS, CMUS, any student management system, and they can be imported in. At a basic level, it's kind of child's first name, last name, date of birth, gender, UPN, and class, and date of admission. You can kind of get those basic details in. If you want to do some more analysis and you have our analysis package, then you can actually go a step further and start bringing in all their extended data, things like primary need, secondary need, looked after, pupil premium. That enables you to kind of cut the data up however you need in order to see what you need to see. Okay, there are some diversity groups as well. These can be manual ones, so whether you have any kind of manual groups, any groups you take out that would make it easier for you to navigate, then by all means create diversity groups. You can have as many of those as you like, but as standard, students are put into registration groups of which they can only be a member of one at any one time. Okay, so I'm going to select registration, and now I have a list of all my registration groups. Okay, incidentally, these are all named after movies, so you may recognize some of the characters, and I think this will also give an idea as to how old we are as well. So I'm going to select the group AP, Austin Powers, and then I have a list of students in here. Okay, we'll go with Foxy, why not? Below this, this will be different for each of you. It really kind of depends on what you've purchased and what you and the students you want to assess at any given time. I've got everything switched on today. The good news is, generally speaking, the approach is the same whichever you use. Aside from GCSE, there's a slightly different approach to that. But the way you use it is exactly the same. So if I'm using a particular breakdown that you're not, that doesn't affect anything. It's still that you can use it in the same way. That's not a problem. And I'm going to go with progression steps today. So we go progression steps, and my drop downs have changed, and now you'll see a list of subjects. Again, this may vary, depends which ones you've purchased. Okay, we'll keep it nice and simple, just English, and then I get to select a particular area within English, reading, writing, spoken language, go reading, and then I have a list of steps here. So if in here it's step 1 through to step 11, which will shortly be changing to 10, for those of you who are aware of the pre-key stage standards changing. If it was the old National Curriculum P levels, I'd have P11 through to kind of around NC 5+. If it's adult curriculum, it'd be pre-entry and entry levels, so kind of E1 through to the M levels. Okay, I'm going to go up to around step 7. Once I've made all my changes there, all I need to do is click display. And what you'll actually notice here as well, it sets to today's date automatically. That's fine, and I'll show you kind of the implications of that. I might actually just go up another step. This doesn't help me tremendously. Step 8, perfect. That's exactly what I need. So now we see the breakdown on the right hand side. There's lots of colors there. If I select the select achievement to add section here, I've got a list of achievements that I can add. Now, again, some of you may not see all of these, some of them may be limited down. A school has the option to limit this drop down to whatever they need. There is a handout in there which gives a definition for each of those. And my advice is always kind of gear this to your lowest perceivable achieving student. What they're there for is to show very, very small amounts of progress. So every now and then we'll get a phone call from a school and say, you know, your system's not detailed enough, which is always kind of surprising to us because I think generally we're accepted as being, you know, one of the most detailed systems out there. And really what it gives you the ability to do is, let's say I select encounter and I click on the box, I've entered an encounter. I then could move to an awareness and enter that awareness. What I now have is a very, very small amount of progress that I can show because it's recorded both of those entries. And that could be as little as a change in breathing, you know, very, very small. Again, it's not a case of using the same approach, not a universal approach with every student. You use these as you need to, you know, as per student. It's kind of individualized. For some students, you may feel just going straight to mastered is sufficient. For other students, you know, if they're working within a level over prolonged periods of time, then, you know, all these yellows here are going to be your friend. They're going to help you show very, very small amount of progress where normally you might struggle. Okay. So it's worth kind of remembering that. What you'll notice is in the top right, it says 35%. Now, that's calculated from the number of greens, the number of masters. Okay, so that is what tracks the number of masters there. And what you'll actually see is if I enter anything else, it doesn't actually track that percentage up. That's not a problem. And the fact that it doesn't do that is good, because otherwise, if we did accrue any percentage progress to that, it would really seriously skew your data, and we don't really particularly like skewed data here. So it's about mastery. It's about knowing what they can do, and then the yellows show you what they're about to do or what they're working towards. Okay, but if I go to mastered, what you'll then start to see is the percentage has now gone up to 38%, and another one 41. So it's continuously tracking the amount of progress that the students are making. So in idealistic terms, what you do this at regular intervals, whether it be every term, every half term, or ongoing, and over that time you would then be able to track progress. You know, ultimately you could say they were on 35% of step 8, they're now on 44% of step 8. That is the progress that they've made. Okay, so that's what we're working towards. What you'll notice as well, I haven't actually got a save button. Every time I click something, it is actually saving it, and that's what that little circle is. It's kind of going to the server and saying, did you write that successfully? Yes, okay, fine, I'll disappear. So if any of you ever hit the circle going round over time, it could mean that your internet's dropped, and we won't give a positive affirmation that it's there unless we get that. So it's about kind of making sure you don't lose any data. We're quite passionate about losing data, and preventing it from happening. So it's always saving. So never worry if your internet goes down, your laptop switches off, you run out of battery, whatever. It's about knowing that it's saved at every given point during your time that you're using it. Okay. So yeah, entering assessment, really simple. Select what you want, click on the box and add it in. And I'm going to add a few more in here and enter that in. Okay, we're now up to 56%. Okay, what you'll also see just beneath this box is a date, and that gives you the ability to backdate assessments. So if you've got long assessment periods and you want to be more accurate with your data entry, that's fine. Put the date back and enter it in for that day. That's absolutely fine. So you can backdate your assessments as well. What this date here gives you the ability to do is to now look at this page on any given day. So that's what it looks like today. If I go back to 2017 and I go display, it now tells me that's what it looked like on this day in 2017, which I've only got one encounter. So I can see through time what it looks like at any given moment on any given day. Go back to there, it all appears again. So we can see that. Okay, now on the left hand side we have some writing written sideways. We've got selection, level status, history, comments and evidence. And I'm just going to go to level status. What this is giving me is a breakdown of what's happening on this page right now. So it tells me which student, subject, the date it was started, which is important. So that's the very first assessment point that was ever added, whether it be an encounter or a mastered. What the percentage is, how many assessments there are on here, how many are completed, and the number of encounters and awarenesses. What you'll also see here is a button that says pie chart. And if I click on that, it brings up a pie chart and tells me what's happening on this page. So immediately I can see the 56% of mastered. It's great, we've got that percentage already. But it also gives you a percentage for each of the levels of achievement that are not mastered as well. So the get number of gaining skills, the number of involvement, the number of engagement. Okay, so if you do have a child that's working within a particular step over a prolonged period of time, where your strength is in showing progress is in how these change over time. Okay, you may say, well, they're on 12% gaining skills and understanding now, 6 months ago, and then 6 months later, they're now on 24%. So overall, it's showing that they're improving. They may not have mastered anything, but that's still important progress to show. Okay, we can still see that progress happening. And as I said before, if you want to change the date, we'll go back. Maybe we won't go back to so far. Let's go back to the 3rd of the 1st, beginning of January. See what this looked like then. In fact, actually the same. And if I go to level status, I go to the pie chart, it looks completely different now. Got lots of stuff they've not even touched on yet, and just that 3% of the encounter. So very powerful, helps you show non-master progression effectively in the system. Click on the T, go back to today. Okay. On the left-hand side again, just below that, I have the history. Now the history lets me see what's happened on any of these assessment points. So this one down here, for example, I can look at this and I can see the original encounter that I entered. Then I went to an engagement. Then I went to mastered. So we're always recording everything that you're adding in, and we can see how that changes over time. What you also get the ability to see is when you hover over each one is who entered it, which is great. If you're in a multi-user system and you see a mastered and you may not necessarily agree with it, you can go, right, okay, John entered that. I don't agree with that. I'm going to go and have a professional discussion with John. I'm pretty sure there's been arguments in the past, but try and avoid those if possible. And actually, it's out of those discussions that kind of key things might be found. You've got a child that is performing in a completely different way in one setting as to another. So having those conversations, the ability to see who entered it is good. If you make a mistake, you go, I didn't mean to enter that mastered, the deletions are here. So all I need to do is tick the deleted box. It's like it never happened. Okay, so if you make a mistake, that's absolutely fine. You can go in here and you can delete it. You can also delete things that other people enter. So if somebody else had entered that mastered, I didn't agree with it, I can delete it and it's like it never happened. However, this box here says show deleted achievements. So if I tick that, I can see that it actually did exist. Also, it's got my name on it, which means now if you have deleted somebody else's assessment, they will know that you deleted it. So just be aware if you are going to start deleting other people's data, because they're going to know it's you and they're going to probably come and find you. Okay, you can't undelete it, but what you can do is get all the information you need to go back and re-enter it if you need to. So yeah, here, if you make a mistake, tick the delete box, it's like it never happened. So back to there, all gone. It's like it never happened. Okay, the next one below is history. Sorry, comments. Comments enables you to add and view comments for the level overall. So you might have a general comment you want to make about this particular step 8 in reading, or you can actually add comments to particular assessment points. So these blue markers on this assessment point here and this one here tell me I've got comments. Okay, so if I click on that assessment, I can now see the comments for it. So if I go to view comments, I can see that I actually wrote on Tuesday the 5th, they said this. Probably want to add something a little bit more constructive than that. But yeah, if a student does something and you feel the need to add a comment, by all means, add a comment. Okay, and you can add those to any of the assessment points or to the level overall if necessary. Okay, so yeah, so that's kind of commenting in the system. If you have Eversense, which is our kind of evidencing platform, there is a tighter integration with it in connecting steps, which enables you to go kind of one step further, not just add text-based comments, but also photos, videos, audio, and documents. And that's kind of listed here with this orange marker that tells me I've got a piece of evidence there. So how that works, if I go, assuming that it was added on this particular assessment point, which it may not have been. Yep, I've got a piece of evidence here, which is just a text post, nothing particularly constructive, but I can see that they have actually got assessments with evidence attached to them. So yeah, you're welcome to kind of go one step further. If you have Eversense, you can do that. If you don't have Eversense, you can sign up for a 90-day trial if you feel the need to, and give it a go and see how it works for you in your particular setting. So yeah, that's kind of everything in the individual assessment screen. Can I just draw your attention quickly? It's just in the about box. It says here best fit 80%. So each of you may have a different best fit, and really what this governs is what percentage this gets to before it automatically completes. So mine's set to 80. So as soon as I hit 80% on this, the level would just say it was completed on the day that last assessment was put in. Now, if you've been using this for some time, it may be kind of set and that's that. If you're new to it, then you know, yours will be, as default, will be set to 95%. It's up to you to set it to whatever you feel is necessary for your school. A typical kind of setting seems to be 80-85%, but it may be worthy of a kind of a deeper discussion on kind of your goals within the school and what you're trying to achieve. I know there was you know, talk from the Rochester Review into moving towards a more secure fit approach. Whether that kind of fits with special needs, I don't know. But I think the overwhelming message is no, it doesn't. But yeah, either way, you could set it to 100% if you wanted to. That's absolutely fine. It's whatever you need it to be. So yeah, that's kind of how to assess individually, and that's how you kind of do that. Now, if I go to now you've got different ways of assessing. That's the individual screen. There are different ways you can assess now. You know, and some of them have been in the system for some time. Some are kind of new to connecting steps v4. You know, if you've used v3 previously, some of these may be familiar to you. So if I go back in, I've got three other options here. So group assessment by level, group assessment by strand, and group subject. Now, if I go to group assessment by level, it's kind of very similar on the sidebar again. A couple of bits are missing because they don't work on a group level. I select my step, but I'm not selecting a particular student here. And if I run that, what I now have are all the students across the top here and all the assessment points down the left-hand side. So I can see, you know, all Foxy Cleopatra stuff here. Now, this is a great screen if you're working with, you know, in mainstream, and all the students in your particular class are at exactly the same place. However, if your students are on completely different steps across the board, then this doesn't really build much value in for you, because, you know, if they're on at different points, you still got to look at each student one at a time. So it has its limitations in that way. Some schools have been telling us they're moving to stream sets, things like that. Then this screen works quite well. And the good news is assessing is exactly the same. You select what you want, you click on the box. And the good news is anything you enter on these screens appear on every previous screen as well. So you're not having to enter things twice. It all kind of comes together into one place anyway. So no worries there. You can also, there's a tick box here, it says assign achievements to whole group. I can actually master a particular assessment point for every student in a particular group, if I so wish. And that will actually go through and enter that for every student. So again, more of a mainstream kind of thing. I think that would be used. Again, I have the history. I still have the ability to look at the history of each assessment point if I need to. And I still have the ability to comment as well and view evidence for particular students if I need to. So yeah, group assessment by level, good for kind of mainstream or stream sets. If you don't have that luxury, then group assessment by strand is a kind of another brilliant screen. And again, works in a very similar way. I select my group, I select my curriculum, I select my particular subject, but instead of selecting a particular step, what I'm actually doing is selecting an area within the breakdown. Now, a lot of these areas actually kind of traverse each particular step. So what this is now doing is it's going through and pulling out a reading everywhere comprehension appears and pulling out every assessment point in which it appears in. So I have all the assessment points for comprehension under step 1. If I scroll down, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6, so on and so forth. So this is really handy if you're, you know, doing topic-based work. You can actually assess a group of students, even if they're at completely different points at exactly the same time. Okay, what it also gives you the ability to do is to look at not just the current level of a student, but the steps above that as well. And that's important. You know, Connected Steps has never prevented you from working on steps above where they're working. So just because a child is step 8 doesn't mean you can't go look in step 9 and step 10. Children don't always work in nice, neat little boxes. Their abilities vary across the board. So never be afraid to look above and see what they can do, and use that to your advantage. Okay. So yeah, so that's kind of group assessment by strand. Again, anything you enter here appears on the previous screens. The final assessment screen is group subject. Now, I'm not a particular fan of this screen. Purely because it suffers the same problem that group assessment by level does, is that we can only look at one particular step. That said, if I concentrate on just an individual student, what it actually gives me is a breakdown of what's happening inside a particular level here. So if I look at word reading, they've got, if I look at Scott, for example, 14% of word reading, but only 4% of comprehension. And what you may start to see, if I go down just one, you might be able to start seeing trends in the way that they're learning. Okay, so word reading, Foxy's got it again, but only ever got 71% of comprehension. So you might always be able to see where you're having to put that best fit in order to, you know, help move them forward. So it's helpful from an analysis point of view. You can assess here. If I click on the little plus, it'll open it up for me and tell me what assessment points are in there. And I can actually assess here as well. That's great, but I think these percentages hold a value of their own in being able to see how, you know, the profile of how your students are actually learning across the board. Okay, and that's kind of it. That's assessing in a nutshell. You know, it's selecting what you want and entering it in, basically. Yeah, so that's how that's how you can assess. So now you've kind of you've sat down, you've done your baselining, which are still to go through. You've done all of that. It's kind of, what do you get back from it? You know, it's not just a case, it's not just a task that you do for absolutely no reason. It's kind of, what can you get back from that? You know, how can you show progress? So we've got different ways of showing progress, and these are covered under the individual reports and the group reports. So if I go to the individual reports section, I've got here 7 reports I can use, and they kind of move from being kind of quite detailed to kind of very overviewed here. The first one is assessments to be mastered. And it really kind of does what it says on the tin. For any given day, I can ask the system what a student's got left to do before they have completed a particular level. We'll go back to Foxy here. So select the student, select everything else, and click display. So this is everything. Let's go to step 9. This is everything that Foxy's got left to do to complete step 9. So anything that's mastered doesn't exist here. All that's left is what they haven't covered, or if they have covered it, where they're up to and when that was last experienced. Okay, so over time this will diminish. It will never disappear completely because of your best fit, but that's always handy, because even if they've completed a particular level, you can always go back here and see what they've done. Oh, see what they've got left to do based on that best fit. So we don't weight assessment points particularly, but you may feel there's some key points that they have to get before they can move on, or before you feel they're ready to move on. So being able to see those here is quite handy. You can also use these screens to inform your planning as well. You know, you're sitting down looking at what a student's got left to do. You can then decide, what you're going to do with them next. Not to be taught from, but to inform your planning, it's kind of perfect. And again, you have the same options here, the ability to change this date, see how it changes over time, and all the options on the left hand side. You can actually assess here as well if you need to. Something we added in because a school said it would be good if we could, so we added it in. But it's at heart, it's a report. So that's kind of assessments to be mastered. Assessments mastered, very simple. Set 2 dates, select your particular subject, and what it'll do is tell you every assessment point they've mastered between those 2 dates. Okay, so if you wanted a kind of the raw details of what they've done between 2 dates, this will give it to you. In English overall as well, or whichever subject, you know, every step that they've actually made, you know, in every area in English. So if you have a student that's making very small amounts of progress and you really want to kind of celebrate that, this can be shown here. Okay, so yeah, assessments mastered, any 2 dates, be it term, half term, whatever you need, it'll show you what they've mastered between those 2 dates. And it doesn't concern itself with the percentage of progress at this point. All it's showing you is every skill. So if they're in their current level, they haven't made any progress, but in the 2 levels above that they have, then this is going to show it. This is going to show that they have actually made progress. Okay, pupil summary. Very simply, again, 2 dates gives you 2 key bits of information. Attainment and progress. This tells me that she's on 56% of step 8, and this tells me in this date period she's made 238% progress. So very simple. Have they made progress? Haven't they? I would be concerned about her writing, only 1% there. Technically concerned about her reading because that's quite a lot of progress to make in a year, but I can drill down and see kind of where that all comes from. What you'll see written on the side, subject filter, gives me the ability to filter out bits that I don't need. So I could select all, select none, and maybe just concern myself with English if that's what I want to see. Again, use the print icons at the top here. If I click that, I can print this out if I need to. Okay. So yeah, pupil summary, very simple. Just tells me my attainment and progress for a particular student. Level summary, kind of a little bit more information here. Be it that everything's here, every subject and every step. And what it's giving me down the left-hand side are all the subjects, and across the top, all the steps. So it's telling me what percentage they have across the board and when they particularly completed a particular step. So this one was completed 17th of the 5th, 2018, that's English reading, and they got 56% there, 10% there, 18% there, and 10% there. So I can clearly see what progress or what attainment they have above that. The status column, to save confusion, identifies to me where they are. So the system considers them to be on 56% of step 8. Okay, so I can see exactly where they're up to. Again, don't forget, you can change the date, put it back to any date you want. You can also view an individual pie chart for any of these. You know, that's what the pie chart looks like for step 8. If I go to step 9, I can go to the pie chart there, see what that looks like. You know, lots of flexibility there to be able to see it. And if you want to filter this out as well, you can do that. Level progress, kind of moving towards kind of, you know, actually seeing that progress as numbers. Level progress, what that will do is work out on any 2 dates where they were and where they are, and it gives me that. The first date is this date here, 3rd of the 7th, 2017, and the last date is the second date, 2018. The dates in between are key dates you can set through the year, which are day and month. So you might say, well, we're always interested on seeing progress on, or seeing where they are on the 20th of the 7th, the 1st of the 9th, the 1st of the 1st, the 5th of the 3rd, and the 1st of the 4th. They might be key dates in your school. You can set them to whatever you need them to be. You have up to 12 that you can add in, and they could be half terms, terms, whatever you need. And it will actually drill out that data at those particular dates. So I can see how a student has changed across those time spans. If you're not a fan of numbers, the line graph here will actually do that for you. It will actually plot all those figures for you onto a nice graph so you can see it. If you've got lots of stuff switched on, it's going to look a little bit like the London Underground map. The filter is your friend here. You can select and unselect particular things and go, you know what, I'm only interested in English. So here I can clearly see not a lot of progress going on, and then suddenly in English reading, a big chunk of progress happens, but not really a lot going on in writing. Okay, so I can clearly see how that progress has been made. If you're not a fan of line graphs, you may be a fan of bar charts. The bar chart simplifies this a little bit further and gives you 2 bars for each of the subject, where they were, where they are. So quite quickly, I can see which subjects they've made progress in and subjects they haven't made progress in across the board. Okay. So yeah, I mean, that's just a very quick overview of the individual reports, but you've got lots of options there, and each of them will kind of serve a different purpose for what you need within the system. But we've got progress for an individual. What about groups? Okay, so we do have some group reports. Okay, and if I go to here, and that's governed on this kind of 4th icon in here, group reports. There's 4 here: level summary, progress, line graph, and bar chart. And the easiest way to kind of explain this screen is it looks at things inversely from the individual reports. So when I look at an individual, I'm looking at one student, all subjects. When I'm looking at a group, I'm looking at one subject, all students. Okay, so this is all the students within AP. The status identifies for me where they are, and then it shows me kind of how each have got there, what percentages they have higher up across the board. Okay, same features as before. You can kind of see, how they've got there. If I want to view the pie charts as well, I've got those to view. Okay. Progress, again, very similar. 2 dates, and it'll work out where each student was on all of my key dates between those 2 dates. So again, I can see how they've changed across that time. The line graph will take that data and plot it for me, nice and simply. And the legend here tells me how each student has done between those dates. Okay, so I've got 3 students that have made progress in this term and 1 that really hasn't made much at all. Bar chart further simplifies that by showing me for each student where they were and where they are. Okay, and there's the 2 dates. So you've got lots there to play with. If you want to kind of go a step further with kind of group reports, our CSAM enables you to kind of delve into the world of aggregated data. We've yet to release this for progression steps, but it gives you kind of headline data for the schools, your pupil premium attainment, cohort attainment, things like that. And if you've imported all your extended data, you can kind of cut those graphs up as you need. It also gives some additional individual reports, things like progress over time, which is progress on multiple levels. So you can see how that stacks up, and progress within a level will show you how the encounters, the awarenesses, the attention response change over time. Okay, and that's really handy. It's like the pie chart, but over time. And I think we're going to kind of drill down into into CSAM as its own training on its own. So if any of you have CSAM and want to know how to use it more effectively, I think we're going to be running a training probably in September on how to use that. But I haven't got time today. I'm almost out of time, and I'm running a little bit behind for that. Yeah, so that's for a group. First off, if you're new to the system or you have new students, baselining kind of real critical. You have to do it, and luckily it's kind of very simple to do the baselining, and you have 2 options. I can baseline via individual assessments, or I can baseline via level summary. It's entirely up to you. I will show you it via individual assessments. Now, what's critical here with the changes that we're doing to the system, and if you are upgrading to our new kind of stuff, it may take you a while to get a handle on each of these particular steps look like, and the ability ranges on that. We do have, conversion graphs to help show you where a student is likely to sit. But if you don't know, if you have a fresh student and you don't know them, or you may have results from a different system, and they might be using their own language to kind of describe where they're at. If that doesn't convert, you don't know where they're at. And I'm just going to select a student I've not worked on. Let's go tester. So I'll go step 9. Actually, let's go with music. Something I know I haven't got. Step 6. Right. So when you're baselining, it's giving the student a starting point in the system. Now, if you don't do that, what it'll actually give them is 0% of the very bottom step, which is step 1. And then if you were to start assessing at a later date, it would then say, let's say that you started assessing without baselining, it might say that they've got 56% of step 6. So your progress will be from 0% of step 1 through to 56% of step 6, which will show 556% progress, which is concerning. It would be brilliant, but it's wrong ultimately. So before you use the system, you have to kind of tell the system where your student sits. Now, if you don't know the student that's coming in, if you have some sense of where they might be, go to that point and see where they're at. So I'm on step 6 here, and literally just look at it and go, okay, right, so these are all the assessment points. Yes, they can do that, they can do that, I think they can do that. Okay, and if you come to the conclusion that they can do all of it, go up 1. If you think they can't do that, go down 1. So let's say I've gone too high at this point. I'm going to go down to step 5, and I can just click on this little arrow here and it'll take me straight there. I can then look at this and go, okay, they can do some of this, but not all of it. Okay, I've still gone too high. I can go down 1. And when I get to that point where I'm looking at it and I go, they can do all of that, they're secure at this point, you now have your baseline, you know where they're at. So if you think they can do everything on a particular page and not everything above that, then you have your baseline. And to set it is simple. There's a complete button here. I click that, I tick the level complete, I change the date to what I need it to be. So if you're doing this, so next academic year, students come in September, and then you don't have a sense of where they're at until the end of the first half term, you can actually backdate that to the beginning of September, so you can show progress for that first half term. So yeah, use this to your advantage to help you show progress for the full time. I'm just going to set it to today, and I can go save. And what you'll now see is that says complete, and technically speaking, this student would now be on 0% of step 5, which is the step above. It doesn't master everything. That's absolutely correct. And I only need to baseline just the 1 step. I don't need to go all the way back to the beginning. So now I can start entering my masters from this date. Critical things here: if you enter assessments, make sure they don't go to before your baseline date. Okay, there's no point me entering masters now for 6 weeks ago when my baseline was set to today. That just doesn't make any sense. So that baseline is really the first point in which you're entering anything for that student. Okay, if you make a mistake, you go, actually, I didn't mean to set it on step 4, I meant to set it on step 5, and you need to undo that baseline. All you need to do is click complete, tick use best fit again, which means now apply the rule of 80%, and click save, and it's like it never happened. I can then go to step 5. I can now click complete again, I can tick level complete, and I can click save, and now I've moved the baseline. As I said, level summary is another way of doing it. The process is actually exactly the same. So once I've loaded up the grid, what I can do is go, okay, step 5 here, click on that, that's the one I want to baseline, click complete, exactly the same box comes up, and click save, and that's now in. Okay, so it's exactly the same on two different ways. The benefit of doing an individual assessment is you can see the content. If you're familiar with the content later on and you think I know where to put them, you could probably use this, and this would be a little bit quicker for you to kind of go through. Okay, yeah, and that's baselining. So critically, always do that. That's the first thing you want to do. Get your students in and then baseline them. Even if it's 6 weeks down the line, backdate that baseline to what you need it to be. Okay. So yeah, that's kind of it. So the things to think about: do you have enough levels of achievement to show progress for your least able? So there's encounters, the awarenesses. If you've got them trimmed down at the moment, then and you think you benefit from them, ask the system administrator to switch them on. Go and talk to the head and say, you know, I need this to show progress. Is your baseline set to the correct level? If you're going to change it, let's say you need to increase it, please give us a call first. So we can go through some additional details with what you might need to do. However, if you're switching over to the new stuff we're doing, it's a good time to kind of reevaluate that now. Are your key dates set to appropriate times? We set ones as standard. If you need to add more, again, ask the system administrator to set those to what you need them to be. Have you baselined your students before starting to assess them? Please do that. Okay. What do you know what to do if you get stuck? We have, well, I'd like to think we have a very good support system here. You have several ways of getting support for us. There's the question mark icon at the top here, and there's the question mark icon down here. And they each go to our support site, and I can type in any question I want, or just words. If I search baseline there, it gives me all the articles that I've got. So you've got a whole support site here. This is the group bar chart, tells me how it all works. Okay, so you can quickly find information. This will actually take you to the support site and give you the ability to look through all of our articles here. We don't hide the telephone number. It is there on the top. It's the biggest text on the screen. If you need to call us, pick up the phone and call us. If you have a problem, I'd rather you bring it to us first so we can deal with it, rather than sit on it for a long period of time. Taking those telephone calls from frustrated teachers is never nice. And if you can come to us straight away and you feel you can, we're not trying to hide from you. We're there. We want to help you. We want to support you in the best way we can. Alternatively, you can actually send us a message. Put your email address in, put your question, and it sends a ticket to us, and then we can kind of communicate via email at that point. We've got a pretty good track record for support. We're talking 20 minutes, an hour. We'll get back to you. Call us. Some days, if it's particularly the beginning of term, if we've got lots of people out training, you might find that a little bit slower, but we do try our best kind of to support you as best as we can. Okay, so yeah, always know that you can kind of come to us if you get stuck. So in summary, you have learned how to assess an individual student, how to assess a group of students, how to assess across multiple steps and strands via the group assessment by strand, how to use the different levels of achievement effectively, how to use the system to inform your planning, primarily through assessments to be mastered, and how to show progress for individuals and groups, and where to go for help. Okay. You've got two handouts in the system. There's the training handout and the definitions of level of achievement. Please have a look at those to help to make sure that you're all singing from the same song sheet internally, knowing what each one means. But thank you all for attending. I hope it's been useful for you. Yeah, and we're here if you need us.